G'day, John Canny here. So, back from the trip last night. Trip to the Queensland Outback in the rain. Rained most of the trip, but we actually didn't get as much rain as predicted up north. It all fell here in the Sunshine Coast where we had 450 millimetres of rain. So I've come home to a soggy place. But I just wanted to talk to you about what worked with the Ranger and the equipment, and what I felt I had a few problems with. So just to start with the car, the Ranger itself. Those who watched the last video getting prepared knew that I had a problem with a warning light talking about the engine coolant temperature. Despite Ford assuring me on 2 separate occasions when I kept taking it back there was no problem with that. There was no problem with that, except the bloody thing came on about every 2 minutes for 3,500 kilometres, so that nearly drove me mad. Also, I had a problem with a yellow engine light coming on. Stopped immediately, checked the book, said it was, I forget the exact words, but something to do with the emission controls. It didn't say go straight to your dealer or anything else. So I was forced to drive with that, and it didn't seem to affect anything. Stayed on for most of the trip. The other thing I had a problem with, the tyre pressure monitor kept giving false readings. So after jumping out and checking my tyre pressures a dozen times, I figured that was a problem also. So the electronics played up a bit. That was quite annoying. But once again, the Ranger itself never missed a beat. Great car, did everything I wanted it to do. When I got bogged, and I did get bogged one stage, I used the rear locker as well to help me out, which it did. You know, I've only got praise for this car. It was a comfortable car, except for those nagging electronic problems going on there. Just worth going to the tyres. The KO2s did a great job, as always. Didn't have any punctures, nothing like that. When we got bogged, they proved that they're not mud tyres. They completely filled up with mud, but nevertheless, I managed to get out with a bit of tricky manoeuvring, dropping the tyre pressures down further, down to about 15. And of course, so they did a good job. And of course, using the Max Tracks and the treads. Now, I've got a pair of Max Tracks and I've got a pair of tread GTs, which is kind of the entry level tread. I took both the different ones just for fun. Look, they both did a great job in the mud. They both were just as difficult to get the mud out of, mind you, heavy, and took us hours trying to get the mud out, and we ended up dangling them in the flowing creek to try and get the mud out, but that was a problem initially. But of course we know those things are essential and did a great job, and were the reason we got out of the bog. On the front of the car I've got a carbon 1200 winch. Didn't get to use it, didn't need to use it or couldn't use it. Where we got bogged in places like that, there were no trees around, nothing to pull on, no other cars anyway, so it stayed where it was. Just looking at the front of the car, there's a lot of animals around. Horses, cattle on the road, millions of kangaroos, emus. Didn't need the bull bar, fortunately, because we didn't actually hit anything. Coming home last night was quite a journey. We got detoured because of the floods blocking the highway. We had to find our way around, and the old ARB intensities were invaluable going through those dark side tracks with a bit of water over them. Not much, but enough water to make it interesting. Okay, if we come around, the iCamper rooftop tent. Some may be interested in how that went. Completely waterproof, fantastic. It's got easier to put up and down since I've started using it. Didn't leak at all, but it's a bit tricky getting in and out of it in the wet. I sat it on the Rhino rack this time. The Rhino rack is sitting on Rhino tracks, and when I hit a big ditch, it actually shunted it back a bit, which you can see here, where it's actually moved back a bit and slid off this particular one, but it's still quite sturdy. I put that through just as an extra and it stayed there, but I'll have to loosen that and bring it back. Other than that, not a problem. Back of the car, I won't go into the camper van because I've talked about that before, but the Stone Stomper did its job, except it doesn't like mud. When in the heavy mud, the mud stuck to it, so much mud that it dragged it down into the dirt. Yeah, it is what it is. Apart from that, I still would think it's invaluable because I don't have any stone chips on anything of any significance, so it did a good job. That's kind of it. The only other thing I wanted to mention, the compressor. Now, got a Mean Mother Adventure 3 compressor. The frustrating part about this was the compressor actually worked well, except for two things. It won't switch on or off, so the switch doesn't work. The gauge is completely inaccurate, and the remote control doesn't work either. It's got a new battery in it, but it just wouldn't work, and that works. So you'd have to actually unplug the power to turn it on and turn it off. Now, this is not that old. It's probably about, maybe it's 4 years old, I suppose, but it hasn't been used a lot because of COVID. We haven't been out there, but it was used a fair bit on this trip as we aired up and down and did a whole lot of things. But it's so annoying that the blasted switch won't work and the gauge is completely inaccurate. So fortunately I've got a good gauge which I use, but I just think, I don't know what to say. I don't think that's good enough. By the way, this is invaluable, the old ARB tyre deflator. Boy, they're great. If you haven't got one of those or something similar, I'd recommend those. Now I've got the HEMA paper maps and I've got the HEMA map book. We struggle with those. They tended not to match up. They didn't seem to have enough detail for us on there. So next step is definitely, before I go out next time, I want to get one of these good GPS mapping systems, either the HEMA HX2 or the Garmin. So I'll have to investigate that, and I'd appreciate if anyone could tell me what they reckon the best one is, because we did struggle there. So that's all. So I'll get to some videos for you on some of the highlights of the trip out there in the wet, and some of the interesting people we met along the way. So continue to watch would be great, and if you can subscribe, it encourages me to continue. And thanks very much. Look forward to talking to you again soon.